A white Isuzu truck arrives at the yard, loaded with goods. Workers inspect the large metal sheets prepared for processing. The camera pans over the rusted surface of a thick steel plate. Several men stand around the workspace planning the lifting procedure. Another view shows the massive scale of the raw steel material. A crane extends its long arm high into the blue cloudy sky. Heavy chains dangle from the hook, ready to grab the cargo. Workers gather beneath the crane to attach the rigging gear. They carefully maneuver the heavy chain links onto the plate. One man guides the hook, while others stabilize the swinging chains. The crane begins to hoist one section of the metal sheet upwards. Two men hold onto the edge to control the direction of the swing. The sheet tilts vertically as it is lifted clear of the ground completely. A plate bending machine sits embedded in the concrete pit below. Workers guide the suspended sheet toward the entry point of the rollers. One man holds the heavy corner while another checks the alignment. The sheet is fed slowly between the three large cylindrical rolls. Power kicks in as the bottom rollers begin to rotate the steel. The machine starts to apply pressure to curve the flat metal. A worker walks alongside, guiding the sheet to prevent jams. He adjusts his stance to brace against the weight of the moving sheet. The rollers turn the metal, which starts to show a slight bend. A worker climbs onto the edge to get a better leverage angle. He uses a hammer to tap the sheet into proper alignment with the roll. The bending process continues as the sheet curves further forward. Another man watches from the side, ensuring the tension is correct. The machine pulls the length of steel through the gap repeatedly. The arc becomes more pronounced as the steel yields to force. The crane lifts the partially bent sheet back up for inspection. A welder prepares his equipment near the newly formed curve. He kneels down to tack weld a support bracket onto the rim. Sparks fly briefly as the metal is fused to the structural side. The crane lowers the sheet back onto the bending rollers again. They feed the sheet through once more to tighten the radius slightly. The output side of the sheet comes out visibly curved now. Workers observe the result as the machine completes the pass. The crane lifts the bent plate high into the air once more. It swings gently, showing off the smooth, continuous curve achieved. This shape will eventually form the wall of a large storage tank. The sheet hangs suspended, looking like a giant crescent moon shape. Workers check the symmetry of the bend before proceeding further. One man taps the edge with a tool to test the stiffness of the metal. He confirms the curvature meets the required engineering standards today. The sheet is lowered again to repeat the passing process if needed. They feed it through the rollers to ensure the curve is perfect. The machine hums as it forces the flat steel into a circle shape. A worker uses a sledgehammer to manually adjust the leading edge. Physical force complements the mechanical pressure from the rollers. The sheet passes through the third time, taking more defined shape. It finally forms a near-complete ring, held open by the machine. The crane grabs the ring to position it for joining another section. They lift the ring clear of the rollers to make way for the next part. Workers bring a second matching sheet to close the circle gap. The crane aligns the two edges perfectly side by side for welding. A welder steps in wearing a protective helmet and heavy gloves. He clamps the two metal sheets tightly to close the vertical seam. Holding the pieces steady, he strikes an arc to begin fusion. Bright light flashes as molten metal bonds the joint together firmly. He moves steadily along the vertical seam to seal the entire length. Another worker adds reinforcing plates along the welded joints here. He welds small square brackets to strengthen the main cylinder body. The camera shows the neat bead of the fresh weld line across. With the first section complete, they prepare to stack it upright. The crane lifts the ring again to move it out of the way. Workers guide it down onto the concrete floor carefully. The ring sits on its edge, displaying the successful fabrication work. Now attention turns to adjusting the machine gears for the next task. A worker crouches by the gears, oiling or lubricating the mechanism. He makes manual adjustments to the top roller height setting. Precision tuning is essential for consistent bending quality results. He inserts a pipe into the gearing system to lock the tension set. Two men inspect the roller setup to confirm readiness for work. The large ring is lifted once more for final positioning and alignment. It hangs in mid-air, spinning slowly as they assess the balance point. Workers push the heavy ring to rotate it for easier handling access. The crane positions the ring horizontally over the work area center. It is lowered down gently to rest securely on the ground surface. The ring is now ready to be welded into a larger cylinder section. Men stand inside and outside to check the internal circular dimension. They verify that the diameter is uniform throughout the entire hoop. Everything looks aligned as they prepare for the next assembly step. The completed ring is placed aside, ready for future component integration. Next, a much larger conical section is prepared for lifting operations. Workers guide the crane hook to attach to the top lifting points. The massive steel cone rises slowly off the supporting ground, supports. It sways slightly due to its heavy weight and momentum in air. The crane rotates to carry the section towards the assembly platform. Other large tank parts are visible, standing in the background yard. This section will serve as the lower or upper cap of the final tank. It is positioned directly above another identical base section waiting below. Workers prepare to mate the two large metal components together. Precisely, alignment pins or guides are used to ensure a flush fit between parts. The crane lowers the cone section slowly onto the base cylinder below. It rests securely on top, creating a multi-tiered industrial structure shape. Workers move in immediately to check the seam between the two layers. They use pry bars to adjust the fit if there is any misalignment gap. Ensuring the edges touch perfectly is vital for a leak-proof connection here. Once satisfied with the placement, they call for welding equipment over. A welder begins the tacking process to temporarily hold the rings in place. He wears a dark hood and thick leather gloves for safety protection. Small tack welds are placed around the circumference, evenly spaced out. These temporary spots allow them to make final corrections easily now. After tacking, they will proceed to lay down full continuous weld seams. Watch how the team initiates the weld on this thick steel joint. Sparks fly rapidly as the electrode melts into the metal groove. Assistants hammer the sides to correct any misalignment immediately. They apply temporary tacks to secure the two large cylinder sections. Notice these custom metal clips holding the seam perfectly straight. The structure stands tall as they inspect the progress around the base. A young worker carries a heavy tool over his shoulder casually. Now the crane steps in to lift the upper section of the tower. Workers guide the heavy piece as it begins its slow ascent into the air. This Kato crane handles the load with surprising ease despite the weight. Another massive cylinder sits nearby, waiting for its turn to be moved. The suspended section swings gently as the operator stabilizes the hook. Precision positioning is critical when stacking these vertical segments. They lower the top cap directly over the bottom base section below. The gap between the rings shows where the final welding will occur. Workers underneath prepare to align the edges for the permanent bond. Once settled, the crane releases the tension to let gravity set it in place. Back to welding as the torch burns through the seam once more. Bright flashes illuminate the workers' faces as they focus on the arc. This reinforces the connection between the heavy industrial tank parts. Meanwhile, another crew checks the stability of the standing towers. A man uses a grinder to smooth out excess material from previous joins. Dust flies as he cleans the surface for a better visual inspection. Two massive completed sections now stand parallel in the workshop yard. The sheer size of these vessels is truly impressive to behold here. Attention shifts to a tensioning device used to pull the seam tighter. A worker turns the wrench to tighten the screw mechanism across the gap. Pulling the metal edges together ensures there are no weak points later. He strikes the wrench with a hammer to get extra leverage on the bolt. Every millimeter counts when building pressure vessels like this. With the seam pulled tight, welding resumes on the prepared edge. Molten metal flows smoothly, creating a strong structural bond. The welder moves steadily along the circumference without stopping. Smoke rises from the heat, treating the steel as the job progresses. Later they return with power grinders to finish the weld bead. Sparks shower outward as the abrasive disc cuts away the uneven ridges. The goal is a flush surface that reduces stress concentrations on the tank. He moves quickly around the curve, demonstrating years of practiced skill. The contrast between the raw rust and clean weld lines is visible. Close-up shots reveal the texture of the solidified metal joint. It looks rugged, but necessary for the strength required here. The crane returns to move a huge conical section horizontally. Workers signal from the ground to guide the swinging load accurately. This tapered part will likely form the top or bottom cone of the vessel. They lift it clear of the ground supports to reposition it entirely. The rotation of the crane arm allows them to access different areas easily. Heavy chains hold the steel pipe securely against the pull of gravity, slowly lowering it onto a flatbed trailer for transport or storage. The ground crew watches closely, ensuring nothing hits the surrounding equipment. Finally, it rests on the steel beams ready for the next phase of work. They unhook the rigging once the placement is confirmed safe. A ladder is brought over to allow access to the higher seams. Welders climb up to tackle the joints that were previously inaccessible. Standing on rungs, they maintain balance while operating the heavy torch. Safety is maintained even though their gear looks quite minimal compared to standards. The crane boom extends high overhead, ready for the next heavy lift. Another welder works near the base, securing the feet of the structure. Intense light fills the frame as the arc stabilizes for deeper penetration. Even in wet conditions, they continue working without significant interruption. Workers carry a long makeshift ladder made from bamboo poles today. They hoist it against the side of the giant metal cylinder structure. Someone climbs up to attach the lifting chain directly to the top rim. This method connects the crane hook directly to the load center. Balancing on the ladder requires excellent coordination and trust. Once secured, the crane takes the weight and pulls him off the ladder. The massive tube begins to tilt upwards as the lift commences fully. It swings freely, showing the immense flexibility of the steel under stress. Ground workers step back to avoid the swing radius of the load. The operator maneuvers the tip downwards to stack it neatly beside the other. Gravity helps stabilize the position once the chains are loosened gradually. Now they prepare to load this complete assembly onto a truck bed. Chains are re-rigged to shift the center of gravity for horizontal lifting. The cylinder is lifted clear of the ground, support beams slowly. It dangles momentarily, while workers check the balance points clearly. Men stand on the truck bed, guiding the chains into place manually. They wrap the heavy links around the steel to prevent slipping during transit. Tightening knots ensures the load won't slide off the flatbed trailer. The camera follows the action as the pipe hangs suspended in mid-air. Slow rotation reveals the full circumference of the fabricated tank shell. Puddles on the ground reflect the cloudy sky above the yard. Trucks wait in the background, loaded with other industrial supplies. The crane rotates the entire load to face the road for loading. Workers run alongside, pushing slightly to aid the rotation speed. The open mouth of the tube faces forward, showing the hollow interior depth. The scale relative to the human figures emphasizes the magnitude of the project. They carefully guide it onto the wooden rollers supporting the truck frame. Smooth movement prevents denting the outer surface of the fresh steel. Once centered, the chains can be tightened down to lock it in position. A man climbs a ladder to inspect the attachment point one last time. He crouches on the curved top to verify the chain tension visually. The driver prepares the crane engine for the final disconnection procedure. Other workers begin clearing the debris from the immediate work area. Cleaning up is essential for safety in such a busy industrial environment. Now the perspective shifts to look from inside the tube itself outwards. We see the silhouette of a worker standing in the center distance. The vastness of the internal diameter provides room for future inspections. A support beam runs along the floor for temporary structural integrity. Another worker enters from the far side, bringing tools into the cavity. They meet in the middle to discuss the alignment measurements together. The lighting changes as clouds pass over the sun outside the opening. Shadows move across the curved walls, indicating the passage of time. Outside again, we see the tube sitting safely on its final supports. This segment completes the fabrication phase before painting or transport. The crane lifts a heavy dome-shaped end cap into position. It swings gently as workers guide it toward the main pipe section. They carefully lower the thick metal lid onto the open cylinder edge. Manual pushing helps align the heavy piece perfectly with the opening. Precision is key here to ensure the seam fits tight for welding later. Now we see the full length of the massive cylindrical tank sitting outside. Welders prepare the seams around the newly placed end cap. One man cleans the rust off the joint surface with a scraper tool. He follows up using a welding torch to tack the pieces together firmly. Bright sparks fly as the electrode melts the metal edges for fusion. These initial tack welds hold the alignment until the final pass is done. Inside the dark cavity, workers set up a chain hoist across the diameter. They pull on the chain to tighten the fit against the internal ring supports. This tension ensures there are no gaps between the inner and outer layers. Welding continues deep inside the vessel to secure the internal ribs. Shadows dance across the curved wall as the arc light illuminates the area. A large overhead hopper structure is lifted into the air by the crane. Men stand nearby, watching its path as it hangs suspended over the yard. This angular component will likely serve as a loading chute for the tank. Operators rotate the boom to bring the heavy steel assembly closer to the target. It is slowly lowered down onto the upper curve of the main fuel container body. Welders climb atop the curved surface to attach the hopper frame securely. One man squats while applying the torch to the base of the vertical plate. He uses a chipping hammer to clean the slag off the fresh weld bead. The connection needs to be solid to handle the weight of incoming materials. We see large patches of white primer applied to smooth out surface imperfections. The tank body shows signs of grinding and repair work on the sides. The crane positions the upper structure ready for final locking and welding. The crane grabs the completed tank unit and rotates it for inspection. It tilts slightly off its support stands as the chains take the load weight. Workers walk around checking the stability as the machine pivots smoothly. Another worker attaches a lifting eyelet by welding a metal loop onto the side. He reinforces the mount point, ensuring it can withstand pulling force. More welding occurs on the exterior handles and attachment points now. The crane finally moves the whole assembly towards a waiting transport truck. Gravity pulls the heavy object down as it settles onto the transport bed. This marks the completion of the fabrication phase for this industrial tanker. Final checks are made by the crew before preparing for road transport next. The camera pans along the massive rusty skin of the pressure vessel. You can clearly see the circular joints where separate rings were joined. The interior walls have been treated to prevent corrosion from stored liquids. Steel beams on the ground indicate how this heavy object was previously supported. Long chains dangle loosely from the hoist hook, waiting for the next lift. A worker signals to the crane operator to keep tension on the cables tight. The background shows other trucks parked in this busy fabrication workshop. Dust motes float in the sunlight, highlighting the scale of the machinery used. Roughly hewn wooden ladders provide access to the top of the tank body. These makeshift stairs look precarious, but get the job done for the teams. Puddles reflect the blue sky above the cluttered workyard environment. Every movement requires coordination between the driver and ground signalman. The sheer thickness of the metal plates suggests high-pressure containment capabilities.
Red Bull watermark indicates this footage is professionally documented for viewers.
Bilibili branding also appears in the corner, identifying the source channel. Notice how the weld seam runs longitudinally along the entire tube body. White paint spots cover areas where defects were repaired before finishing. The hopper shape on top resembles a feed mechanism for grain or coal transport. Crane operator visibility must be maintained constantly during these heavy shifts. Workers wear traditional clothing adapted for comfort in hot outdoor conditions. Protective masks shield faces from harmful fumes generated by melting metal. Chains scratch against the painted surface, creating noise in the quiet yard. The suspension setup on the trailer waits ready to carry this oversized load. Ground-level debris is cleared away to create a safe path for movement. Sunlight glints off the curved roof, reflecting the intensity of midday heat. A second, similar tank sits nearby, showing mass production techniques at play. Support pillars underneath the tank prevent deformation under its own weight. Lift points are strategically welded to balance the center of gravity precisely. The rotation of the load demonstrates the strength of the lifting rigging gear. Inspectors walk alongside, checking for any structural weaknesses or flaws. Wheels on the trailer frame indicate this site is designed for mobile logistics. Safety cones mark off restricted zones where the crane swing radius extends. The crane cabin sits elevated, giving the operator a clear, unobstructed view. Hydraulic hoses connect the power pack to the boom extension cylinders. Steel reinforcement plates add extra durability to critical stress points. Loose tools are scattered around, showing an active and dynamic workspace. Cement bags stacked in the distance suggest nearby building construction projects. The horizon line shows distant residential buildings bordering the industrial zone. Overhead power lines cross above the yard, delivering electricity for machines. Workers pause occasionally to communicate instructions before proceeding further. The texture of the rusted metal contrasts with the smooth, fresh paint sections. Gaps between tank segments allow for flexibility during thermal expansion changes. Heavy-duty shackles secure the lifting points, ensuring safety during transport. Manually turning bolts tightens the connections on temporary support braces. Shadows lengthen, indicating the day is progressing past early morning hours. Clouds drift slowly across the sky, providing natural lighting for the chute. A pile of scrap metal awaits recycling or repurposing into smaller parts. The process highlights the craftsmanship involved in manual heavy fabrication. Engineers likely calculated the exact load-bearing limits beforehand thoroughly. Tightening procedures ensure the vessel remains sealed against leaks safely. Final grinding creates a smooth finish, removing sharp burrs from the cuts. Quality control inspections happen before the unit leaves the factory floor. This scene emphasizes the collaborative effort required to build such structures. The video captures the raw industrial atmosphere of real-world engineering work. Next steps involve coating the entire exterior to protect against weathering elements. Transport regulations require permits for carrying loads exceeding standard sizes. The crane lowers the hook slowly once the load is stabilized completely. Crew members give thumbs up, signals indicating the operation went successfully well. Equipment is cleaned and coiled up, ready to be moved to the next site. Documentation photos are taken to record the build status for the client records. The finished product stands tall, ready for delivery to a client's facility soon. Industrial manufacturing relies heavily on skilled hands performing precision tasks daily. This concludes our review of the third segment, showing final assembly details. Stay tuned for the final segment covering testing and handover procedures today. Here the massive tank shell arrives at the yard. A crane lifts it gently off the ground supports. Workers guide the heavy steel structure carefully. It slides slowly onto the prepared foundation stands, ensuring perfect balance before the next step begins. The welding marks show previous assembly work done well. Steel plates are already fixed along the main cylinder. We can see the raw metal surface needing finishing later. Crane help rotate the piece for easier access below. Now the team adjusts the vertical support legs underneath. They check the alignment to keep the frame stable, using manual force to slide the metal posts in place. Precision is key here for the axle mounting points. Bolts are checked to ensure nothing wobbles during transport. Temporary shims might be used to level the height. Next, the tank is hoisted toward the trailer chassis. Two men push from the side to prevent swinging. The yellow frame beneath holds the weight safely. Alignment pins guide the tank down onto the saddle. Careful lowering ensures the bolts line up perfectly. Once settled, they secure it to the main beam. This central connection bears most of the road stress. Safety checks happen before releasing the crane hook. The chassis is ready to carry the fuel load soon. A worker manually shifts the tank for final tweaks. Leverage is applied to the curved metal side. Teamwork allows them to move tons of steel easily. Small adjustments prevent major issues during travel. We take a closer look at the weld joints today. Rust spots appear, but will be treated with paint. The structural ribs add strength to the thin walls. Support pillars rest on solid ground blocks nearby. Another tank sits in the background waiting for work. The shop floor is busy with various projects active. Dust and debris cover the area from cutting work. A welder crouches to join the bottom reinforcement. Bright sparks fly as the electrode meets the steel. He wears a mask to protect his eyes from UV light. The bead looks consistent along the entire length. Strength is added where the tank meets the frame. Inspecting the long weld line running horizontally. No gaps should exist to prevent leakage risks. The metal glows slightly from the recent heat. Clean surfaces ensure better adhesion for coatings. Workers climb up to install the roof platform. Gravity makes carrying beams up the ladder hard. They position a heavy steel plate across the dome. This will serve as a walkway for maintenance crews. Balance is tricky, standing on the curved surface. One man holds steady, while the other places the piece. Safety harnesses are worn when height becomes dangerous. Securing the corners first stabilizes the whole beam. Tack welding holds it temporarily in position. Then full passes are made to seal it permanently. Smoke rises as the metal fuses together tightly. Checking the slope helps rainwater drain off properly. Another beam is brought up for the rear section. They lift and lock it into the designated slots. Precision cuts were made off-site to fit here. The profile matches the curvature of the tank body. Tightening fixtures ensure no movement occurs on road. Final touches are added to the safety railing mounts. Lighting connections might be routed through these beams. Quality control measures verify structural integrity. Now, a level tool checks the flatness of the new deck. Even small deviations matter for equipment mounting. They hammer lightly to adjust the seated position. Patience is required for high-precision workmanship. The white painted areas indicate primer application zones. Consistent spacing creates a professional finished look. Tools are kept away from the welding arc zone. Everyone watches closely to avoid potential hazards. Back to measuring the longitudinal centerline distance. A straight edge confirms the symmetry is correct. Marking with chalk guides the subsequent welding steps. Accuracy prevents costly mistakes later in assembly. Both sides must mirror each other, perfectly aligned. The crew works fast despite the hot weather conditions. Sweat does not slow down their productive workflow pace. Double-checking dimensions saves time overall. Final confirmation before committing to permanent welds. Welding resumes on the upper platform attachments. Thick beads secure the heavy-duty metal components. The operator moves smoothly along the seam line. Protective gloves shield hands from intense radiation. Cooling slag is chipped away after the pass finishes. Smooth edges reduce injury risk for future users. The surface is prepped for the final protective coat. Attention turns to the suspension system underneath. Hydraulic jacks support the heavy orange brackets. These absorb shocks while driving on rough terrain. Aligning the pivot points requires careful measurement. Two men hold the bracket steady against vibration. A third person operates the welding torch steadily. Sparks shower down near the dusty ground below. Jacks are adjusted to match the frame height perfectly. Stress distribution is critical for axle longevity. Bolts are inserted through the pre-drilled holes now. Welding reinforces the nuts so they won't loosen. Multiple layers of steel increase load-bearing capacity. Orange paint protects the metal from corrosion early. Final inspections confirm everything is tight and secure. The chassis takes shape as a complete unit ready. Great job on this complex fabrication project today. Analyzing the heavy-duty chassis frame here. Look at these orange suspension brackets closely. Steel beams welded for ultimate structural rigidity. Support pillars spaced evenly along the length. Base plates anchored securely to the ground. Workers preparing flat metal sheets on ground. Measuring and marking lines for precise cuts. Electric grinder smooths the sharp metal edges. Arc welding joins two separate steel components together. Bright flashes illuminate the welding process instantly, checking the angle of the bent metal piece. More welding seals the joint permanently in place. Close up on the bead quality of welds. Grinding down rough seams for a smooth finish. Worker measuring the finished panel dimensions. Carrying the long fabricated side panel over. Positioning the skirt next to the main tank. Aligning the curve with the wheel well shape. Adjusting height to ensure proper clearance below. Workers inspecting the fitment from multiple angles. Securing temporary placement before final welding. Panel now sits flush against the chassis frame. View from rear showing integrated design detail. Transition to mechanical equipment preparation area. Green air compressor unit ready for lifting. Crane hook attached securely to the top loop. Hoisting the heavy machinery into the air slowly. Workers guiding the suspended load carefully forward. Lowering compressor towards the mounting platform base. Ensuring the pulley aligns with the drive shaft. Setting the unit down onto the steel beam. Fine-tuning position for bolt insertion later. Welding inside the compartment for added stability. Intense light from the welding torch visible. Securing the internal support brackets firmly. Full view of the installed pump assembly. Moving on to the main diesel engine unit. 2 men inspecting the engine before lift. Radiator grill facing outward for airflow cooling. Crane chains attached to the lifting points. Engine starts rising vertically off the ground floor, swinging the massive engine over the truck bed. Workers beneath signaling the operator above clearly, lowering the engine onto its dedicated support tray, manually adjusting the tilt of the engine block, centering the weight distribution over the axle, preparing to weld the engine base permanently now. Welder crouching under the machine, working quickly. Sparks flying upward from the welding point location, connecting fuel lines to the newly installed tank. Double check all mechanical connections are tight. Operator verifying alignment of belts and pulleys. Ready to begin the exterior painting stage. Mixing paint in a bucket with a stirrer stick. Pouring thick grey paint into the spray cup. Securing the lid tightly on the spray gun. Walking up the ladder to access high surfaces. Spraying primer onto the side of the tank. Moving gun steadily for consistent coverage layers. Avoiding drips by maintaining correct distance speed. Wide shot showing progress on the tank coating. Smooth white finish covering the dull metal. Spraying near the roof railings carefully. Getting into corners where dust collects easily. Ensuring the dome end gets full coverage too. Painter moving along the length of vehicle. Complete first coat applied to the body. Time to switch focus to underbody painting. Mixing darker color for chassis components. Loading black paint into a second spray gun. Starting on the side guard railings first. Protecting pipes with masking tape prior spray. Painting the large horizontal pipe running length. Detailed spraying around valve fittings connectors. Masked sections kept clean from overspray mist. Working around complex bends in the piping. Ensuring no rust spots remain visible anywhere. Dark grey contrasts sharply with white tank body. Moving back to spray the rear chassis section. Wheel arches get extra thick layer of paint. Final touches on the mechanical piping system. Checking for missed spots on the frame below. Overall painting job complete on all surfaces. Now, time for the final branding identity. Unrolling large vinyl decal sheets near truck. Positioning the transfer tape with letters carefully. Aligning the word Fazal with the tank seam. Peeling away the backing paper slowly here. Pressing down the red letters onto surface. Using squeegee tool to remove air pockets. Ensuring edges are stuck down tightly flat. Removing the clear transfer film gently now. Revealing the bright red logo underneath. Continuing process with remaining letters in sequence. Trimming excess vinyl from outside edges. Double checking alignment for symmetry and balance. The brand name is now fully visible clearly. Peeling off the final protective film layer. Inspecting the adhesion quality on the curve. Adding small detail stickers to complement the name. Cleaning up any fingerprints on the new decals. Vehicle styling peeling back officially completed reveals the bold red letter Z. Carefully lifting the clear film leaves perfect adhesion. The workers smooth out bubbles on the curved metal surface. Precision application ensures the brand name aligns perfectly. Small tools help press down the vinyl edges firmly. The team works together to finish the large logo section. Removing the backing paper exposes the clean red color. Final touches made to ensure no creases are visible. Transition to spraying a vibrant red stripe along the body. Using cardboard as a shield keeps the paint line sharp. Spray, gun moves steadily for even coverage on the curve. Another worker holds the mask in place during application. Thick layers of red paint cover the original white base. Consistent pressure maintains the uniform width of the band. Lower section gets its own coat below the main cylinder. Red paint flows smoothly over the metal surface now. Moving along the length covers every inch completely. Sharp contrast between colors looks professional and neat. Masking paper removed later reveals crisp painted edges, continuing the stripe towards the front end of tank. Worker inspects the wet paint for any missed spots. Technique highlights skilled craftsmanship in auto detailing.
Red stripe creates a dynamic visual flow for vehicle.
Back and forth motion ensures total opacity of color. Paint sprays in a fine mist that settles evenly. Underneath section also receives the protective coating layer. Detailed attention paid to corners and structural beams. No drips allowed as the artist controls the nozzle well. Stripe reaches the very edge of the chassis frame. Time to add safety features along the lower guardrail. Applying high visibility reflective tape for night traffic.
Red and white checks provide excellent contrast on dark frame.
Peeling the backing strips away to expose adhesive. Pressing down by hand secures the tape against bumps. Long continuous run follows the slope of the chassis. Corner wrapping around to the back panel requires care. Ensuring tape sits flush prevents snagging during travel. Safety regulations dictate this level of exterior marking. Securing ends tightly avoids peeling over time here. Reflective segments catch light from other vehicles passing. Full-length coverage maximizes visibility from all angles. Hand smoothing removes air bubbles trapped underneath tape. Clean cut at corner creates a professional finished look. Checking alignment one last time before moving forward. Tape adheres strongly to the painted metal surface. Final segment attached near the wheel well support. Inspection complete on the decorative finishing touches. Camera pans across the completed branding work done. Large Fazal Goods logo stands out boldly on side. Text below indicates Foji Cement Factory affiliation clearly.
Round emblem on rear adds corporate identity element too.
Colors match perfectly, creating cohesive design aesthetic overall. Logo placement is central and balanced for symmetry. Smaller engineering service info printed near the top railing. Contact numbers visible for customers needing service calls. Rear view displays full circular badge with green accents. Truck cab backs up to connect with the loaded trailer. Fifth wheel coupling slides into position beneath hitch. Locking mechanism engages to secure weight of tank. Air lines and electrical cables plugged in correctly. Close-up shows heavy-duty pin locking into place safely. Connections tested to ensure brake systems function properly. Truck pulls forward slightly to test connection stability. Wheels turn sharply, demonstrating steering linkage works. Dust rises as tires grip the dirt ground firmly. Vehicle maneuvers out of the assembly yard easily. Side profile shows the massive size of this hauler. 3-axle setup supports the heavy cylindrical load well. Red wheel rims add stylish custom pop to standard black tires. Front grille bears Isuzu brand insignia prominently displayed. Sun begins setting, casting golden glow over scene. Engine revs preparing for departure onto public roads. Exhaust fumes puff out as power builds slowly. Gate opens wide, allowing truck space to exit. Mirrors extend outward for better lane awareness soon. Driver checks mirrors before pulling onto pavement. Truck turns right, merging into local traffic flow. Suspension flexes under the shifting weight of cargo. Street lights flicker on, signaling end of working day. Pedestrians watch the heavy machinery pass by slowly. Brake lights illuminate bright red as slowing occurs. Vehicle proceeds down the dusty industrial zone road. Journey begins carrying goods to distant destination now,